presented tonight by Emily Rubin.
A major leap in understanding swine flu. More cases, but most of us could be safe. Amid the fear, some bright news. A team of scientists conclude that swine flu may not be a mass killer. We report on their findings and ask if illnesses like this are part of the price we pay for farming animals. This is More 4 News, also tonight. There's no leadership crisis, says Gordon Brown, as amended vote on MPs' expenses limps through the Commons. Horror in Holland. Was this an attempt to kill the Queen? We report from this summer's gateway to Europe for thousands of desperate Africans, the tiny island of Lampedusa. And for us, the war is over. The British Army leaves its base in Basra for the last time. More cases of swine flu have continued to be confirmed throughout the world. Here in Britain, there's now a total of 8 cases. But we could be on the threshold of a breakthrough in understanding the disease. A consortium of scientists has deconstructed its genetic code and as a result is suggesting that swine flu, while it may become a pandemic sweeping the globe, will not become a fatal pandemic. Julian Rush reports now on how scientists are beginning to unravel the virus's makeup.
Flu viruses can spread if you don't catch your coughs or sneezes hygienically.
As this government ad hits Britain's TV screens, some 230 suspect cases of swine flu are now being investigated. And still no human-to-human spread here, all the new cases associated with travel to Mexico and all with mild symptoms. Since the weekend, virologists have been poring over the genetic sequences of the viruses as they're isolated from patients around the world and placed on genetic databanks. So far, they all look remarkably similar to the earliest found in Mexico.
Overall, the characteristics of the virus tell us the genes don't have any of the signatures that we would associate with a highly pathogenic virus. Not in any of the genes that we've looked. We don't see anything unusual that would indicate that this is going to be a severe virus.
Flu viruses have proteins on their surface, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, the H and N that defines them. Hemagglutinin is what binds to human cells to invade them. On this virus, its target is the upper respiratory tract, where infections are usually milder and where it's easier for the virus to spread. It would be much more dangerous if it targeted the lower respiratory tract and the lungs. The hemagglutinin molecule has to be cut by enzymes in the body before it can enter human cells. This virus has a single site where that happens. Pathogenic strains like H5N1, bird flu, have multiple sites, making them much more dangerous. And in its other genes, some variants of one called NS1 can trigger an overreaction of the immune system called a cytokine storm that can be fatal. But in this virus, NS1 is not unusual. The origin of the virus still seems to be Mexico, brought around the world by air travel. Analysis of the genetic makeup has revealed how it evolved. The current virus has its origins in both American and European pigs. Until recently, American pigs carried a single pure swine flu, an H1N1 virus which had mutated from humans in the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. But in 1998 it suddenly mixed, reassorted, to get genes from human and bird flu viruses too. The number of strains exploded, the bird flu genes making the virus able to spread much faster. But very recently, one strain, an H1N2, somehow mixed with a strain from European pigs to create a new H1N1, the one that's now jumped to the human population. It is early days. This virus is new to humans and will almost certainly change as it adapts to its new hosts. The big unknown is whether it will change to become more dangerous.
Well, as Julian Rush was reporting, scientists investigating the disease are keen to chase its origin, but there's no doubt over its route into humans. That was through pigs. Harry Anscombe reports now on the difficult and disease-ridden history of man's relationship with the dirty swine.
If swine flu does indeed prove to come from pigs, it's only the latest in a long line. It was the so-called Dark Ages that northern Europeans first began to domesticate animals, to to live cheek by jowl with them. And for centuries, the human population was regularly decimated by the diseases that jumped the species barrier as a result. Now our immunity to pig-borne infections is much higher, but our forefathers' trauma has perhaps left an ancestral fear that explains in part our own horror at the currently unfolding swine flu phenomenon.
Infectious diseases like influenza are the price we pay for living in, quote, civilized communities, and for our practice of living in communities and our practice of domesticating animals and indeed undertaking agricultural enterprises.
Of the animals that were first domesticated, it's thought the goat gave us TB, now more prevalent than ever. It's killed 100 million people worldwide in the last 100 years. Cows gave us measles, 200 million people dead. Chickens gave us typhoid. Influenza originated in ducks and quickly spread to pigs, where it has continuously mutated and spread to humans, not yet immune. So man and pig may have existed side by side for the last 10,000 years, but an increased demand for meat globally over the last 30 years or so means that pigs on farms are being kept in huge numbers. Those are perfect conditions for disease, and why medical historians are now claiming that this is the age of emerging plagues. In fact, since the 1970s, there have been an estimated 30 new diseases emerging from animals across the world, and infectious disease deaths have also been growing steadily. It's being put down to the intensive and confined conditions that farm animals now exist in, vast warehouses filled with livestock meeting global demand for this sort of food. The US Institute of Medicine calls what is happening a catastrophic storm of microbial threats, similar microbes that in the past Europeans, without knowing, took with them to help establish their colonies who weren't immune.
Europeans and particularly people across Eurasia, Europe and Asia, had domestic pigs as well as domestic cattle from which we got quite a number of these diseases. When we then visit parts of the world like North America, like the Pacific Islands, where they did not have either wild or domestic animals of this type, people there had not developed any kind of tolerance of these diseases.
In Mexico today, where the recent influenza outbreak started, there are still 168 suspected dead. The human victims of viral diseases, part of the butcher's bill our species has paid for affordable meat.
Incidentally, shortly before we came on air, it was announced that a member of President Obama's security team who went to Mexico shortly before the president went there recently is suspected of having contracted the swine flu. The celebration of Queen's Day in the Netherlands